You have to be kidding me. That is impossible. That is absolutely impossible what he just did. That may be the greatest catch I've ever seen in my life.
Stopped by Iguodala to Curry, back to Iguodala to the rim. Oh, great block. James out of nowhere, skies to the right.
You've got Marshawn Lynch in the backfield. You've got a guy that's been borderline unstoppable in this part of the field.
Steps into it, pass is caught! Diggs! Sideline! Touchdown! Unbelievable! Vikings win it!
All right, welcome back to Locker Room Takes. We're not going to waste too much time. We're just going to get into it. This episode is going to be my Week 1 game picks. I told you guys that before the games start on Sunday that I was going to come up with a video picking each game, who I think was going to win. I'm not going to do final score because I just not going to do it, but I am going to pick the winner. We'll see how I do. Probably not going to do too well, but we're going to try to keep track of this throughout the whole season. At the time of recording this, I already uploaded 2 videos of, well, the 2 videos that I made will be posted by the time this video comes out about the Chiefs and the Ravens season opener, as well as the Brazil game between the Packers and the Eagles. I gave my in-depth prediction on those 2 videos, on those 2 games in those 2 videos. I chose Kansas City and Philadelphia to win their games respectively. And at the time of recording, those games have not been played yet, so we'll see when this comes out on Sunday morning. We'll know whether or not I was right or wrong. I don't know yet, so we're going to have to wait and see. So not going to go into those games. Just going to address one more time that I chose Kansas City over Baltimore at home and Philadelphia over Green Bay in Brazil to open the season for those guys. And if you want a deeper explanation, go ahead and check out those videos if you haven't already. So we're going to start with the first slate of games in the 1 o'clock window on Sunday. And the first game listed that I have up in front of me is that the Atlanta Falcons hosting the Pittsburgh Steelers. This is 2 teams, both with new quarterbacks, taking the field to start the season. Russell Wilson in Pittsburgh, and obviously Kirk Cousins being the big acquisition in Atlanta. We can get into the Michael Penix thing at a later date and time, but right now this is Kirk Cousins' team, and I do believe that that's a good fit. I'm on record saying that I think Kirk is average with really good stats, and that's not necessarily a knock because I think he is actually one of the better situated players for that Atlanta offense right now with a bunch of young, incredibly talented players that still haven't even scratched the surface of their potential, and I think Kirk Cousins can help them break out of that. Arthur Smith being gone, Raheem Morris being in. We like the new regime. It's a weak division in the AFC South, so I expect pretty good things from Atlanta. I do think that they're going to end up winning that division. I'll go off after Week 1 commences because I don't really have time to do it beforehand, but I'll go off and give you guys an idea of who I have winning divisions, who I have in the wild card spots. I'll give you a full-blown playoff prediction. I understand it'll be after Week 1, but close enough. You know, we just started doing this. I'm going to take Atlanta in this game. I don't have the point spread in front of me, but I'm going to take them straight up to take care of business at home to open the season. There's a lot of hype in Atlanta right now, and there should be. This is the best team on paper that they've had, and they significantly upgraded the quarterback position, no matter which way you want to look at it. Even if Kirk Cousins is not one of the top 10 quarterbacks in this league, and he isn't, but even if he was, even that he is not, he's still a gigantic upgrade over Taylor Heineke or Desmond Ridder or whoever they decided to play a quarterback over the last couple of years. He's a massive upgrade no matter what way you want to boil it. And it's what happens if and when they get to the postseason that we start to pull back on Kirk Cousins and the Falcons, but I like the Falcons at home in this game. The next game is Buffalo hosting Arizona. I think Arizona is sneakily one of these spoiler teams in the NFC that can win a game that you don't expect them to, and potentially knock a team out of the playoffs. I don't think they are a playoff team, but I do think they could be frisky, especially within the division, play spoiler to a team like Seattle or a team like Los Angeles, something along those lines. I don't understand too much as to why the Buffalo Bills are being downgraded as much as they are. I understand they lost weapons. Stephon Diggs is gone. Gabe Davis is gone. I actually think that losing Stephon Diggs is sort of addition by subtraction. I think it'll benefit Josh Allen to not have that kind of toxic bickering on the sidelines that he's had over the last couple of seasons. And it'll give him the opportunity to just make the best read possible. And let's not act like they don't have options for Josh Allen to throw to. Dalton Kincaid in his second year is going to get a lot more targets, and he's impressive. I'm sure everybody that saw him play last year would agree that he is impressive and has a lot of potential. Keon Coleman, the rookie receiver, he's a fan favorite based off of his personality, and I'm sure once he takes the field, we're going to start looking at him as a really strong potential star there. And I also think people forget that they signed Curtis Samuel, who is not a sorry receiver. He's not a top receiver. He's probably your average number 2 receiver in this league, depending on how you want to boil that down. But he's not a scrub. There's not a whole bunch of no-names on this team. There's some youth at the position. Josh Allen is Josh Allen. He's going to make good throws. He's going to throw guys open. I'm still high on the Bills. I don't understand why they're getting downgraded so much. People have them missing the playoffs. I don't. I still think I'm not going to give away who wins that division yet, but I definitely think the Bills are in the conversation. So I'll take the Bills at home. So far, every home team slated I have winning. Next is Chicago hosting the Tennessee Titans. So in Chicago, Caleb Williams' official debut. And I don't know if I've made this clear since starting this, but I will say that Caleb Williams and the Bears are the most interesting team in the league this year. Out of every team that we can watch on any given Sunday, the Chicago Bears are the team I'm most interested in seeing and the most excited to watch how things turn out, because I'm a big Caleb Williams fan, and I have been since he was since he was a freshman at Oklahoma. And I'm happy for him, and I'm hoping for the best. And if there's a franchise in the NFL starving for success at the quarterback position and really in general, it's Chicago, the only franchise in the NFL that's never had a 30-plus touchdown quarterback or a 4,000-yard passing quarterback. It's been a rough history from the quarterback position in Chicago. I think that's going to change. I think Chicago's luck is going to turn around, and I think it's going to come on the shoulders, of Caleb Williams. I'm high on the Bears. I think this is a nice game, because I don't think the Titans are the easiest out in the world, but if the Bears are as good as I believe they could be and should be, they should be able to take care of business at home in Chicago. So I got them winning that game. So again, we're continuing this trend of home teams holding it down in week 1. Moving on, we have the Cincinnati Bengals in Cincinnati hosting the New England Patriots. I'm gonna preface this by saying I don't think much of the Patriots. If you saw my quarterback ratings video, I had Jacoby Brissett, who is their week 1 starter, rated as the 32nd, so worst of the starting quarterbacks in the NFL. And that's not to say he can't play decently or efficiently, but he's a bridge quarterback, and we all know that at some point or another, Drake May is going to take over. As far as when, who knows? As far as how good he looks, who knows? I also think Joe Milton being in that building is incredibly interesting, considering that they've been really impressed by what he's done so far in camps. He's an athletic freak, but he's as raw as a prospect gets in the NFL. I think the Patriots are going to be in contention for the top pick in the draft. I think they're going to be one of those teams that's probably going to be the worst in the NFL this year. One of them at least. I'd say at least bottom 3. Could they surprise us? We'll see, but I think Cincinnati has a chip on their shoulder. Even though Cincinnati has a tendency of starting kind of slow, I'm going to take them in this game. If they lose this game, who knows what we're going to see from them, because this is a game they should win going away. Next is the Colts hosting the Houston Texans. And this is the first game slated so far where I actually have the away team winning. But I don't want that to come as a knock against Indianapolis, because I think that they are a very competitive team that, if they weren't in the AFC, would probably be a lock for the playoffs. I think they're an incredibly deep and incredibly talented team. You guys know how I feel about Anthony Richardson based on my quarterback rankings video. I believe heavily in Anthony Richardson. However, I think that this game for the Texans, considering the hype that they have going into the season, after the year C.J. Stroud had, after acquiring the players that they acquired, them being in the conversation for Super Bowl favorites, I think you kind of have to win that game. It's a divisional game. It's on the road. Your first game of the year. You got to set the tone. I think that they're going to come out swinging for the fences. It also kind of puts the pressure on them to lose as well. So I could definitely see this game being a push and Indianapolis stealing one to start the season. But I'm going to take Houston. I believe that they're favored. I should have the spread in front of me, but I don't. I'm just looking at the slated games and the schedule and what the games are. But I will take Houston on the road. This next game is also an interesting game because I also think that this might be a little closer, even on paper, than people care to admit. And that is the Jacksonville Jaguars at the Miami Dolphins. Before I give away my idea here as far as who's winning, I think both teams are very solid fringe playoff teams. The Dolphins were among the best teams in the league throughout most of the regular season, and they struggled, towards the end of the season and obviously in the playoffs couldn't get anything done. I feel that being a trend again this year. It seems like that's the identity that they have. So until they break that, that's what I feel. But even though I believe in them starting relatively strong, I'm going to take Jacksonville to I believe that would be an upset because I'm pretty sure Miami would be favored by at least 3 points in this game. But I'm going to take Jacksonville because I think a healthy Trevor Lawrence and the Jaguars falling apart at the end of the season like they did similarly to the Dolphins, I think they're going to come out swinging for the fences. And I just think they match up relatively well with them. So I'm going to take Jacksonville in what will probably be a pretty close game, but I think Jacksonville is going to win that one. That's probably my first upset of the week. The next game slated is the Saints hosting the Panthers. I don't believe heavily in either of these teams. I'm pretty doubtful about both of them. When it comes to picking who I think will win, there's a couple of factors that we have to consider. Number one is New Orleans is home. And regardless of how many people are in that stadium, due to probably a lack of ticket sales this season, because let's be honest, they're not really the most interesting team in football, they still have a roster that's competitive enough to win some games. And that stadium is a hard stadium to go on the road and play in, and we all know that. I think Carolina has improved very mildly, but they still feel like the same team going into this year. What we're really going to be looking for as far as Carolina is Bryce Young going to do anything? Because last year he looked bad. He didn't look like a rookie quarterback. He looked like a freshman quarterback, literally and figuratively. He looks small, and he was not doing what he was supposed to do. Granted, the help around him is almost non-existent. With that being said, though, he does have to show some sort of growth and some sort of promise. But to start the season against New Orleans in New Orleans, even though New Orleans is not necessarily one of the best teams in the league, they're far from it. It's a tough way to open the season. I'm going to take New Orleans there at home. Then we got my team, the New York Giants, hosting the Minnesota Vikings. Some people are low on the Vikings. I'm dead set in the middle for a couple reasons. I'll say for 2 reasons. The reason that I have some holdback is because I don't believe in Sam Darnold, and it's a shame that J.J. McCarthy is not going to have an opportunity to get on the field this season due to his injury. But I'm not a Sam Darnold guy, and I never really was. The roster in Minnesota is very decent. I mean, especially offensively. They have players and weapons all across the board offensively. Defensively, they might have some holes, but they're not a bad roster. If you look at the Giants roster, they have Daniel Jones, and I think that's enough to say that they're not a good enough team to compete very well in this league. I think the Giants are going to be one of those bottom 3 teams without a doubt. And Daniel Jones being your quarterback is just not setting you up for success, and that's just the way it is. He had one good year that we've talked about, and he got paid for it. He's arguably the most overpaid quarterback in NFL history. I mean, he's in that conversation with Deshaun Watson, and that's not good company to be in right now, especially if we're talking contracts. And there's a few bright spots on the Giants team, on that roster that they can build around, be it Andrew Thomas. We'll see how Malik Neighbors develops. You got Kayvon Thibodeau, Dexter Lawrence, you have Brian Burns. There's players on that team, but instead of looking at a team as like, okay, this is a roster that has some holes, no, the Giants are basically one massive hole that has a couple of spots filled in, and that's it. Other than that, they're awful on paper. The Vikings are going to win this game, and maybe it'll be close, but I got the Vikings, and whatever the spread is, they'll cover. I imagine they'd be favored. We got another divisional matchup coming up next. The Chargers, who are another one of the teams I'm very interested in seeing this year and seeing how they develop, are hosting the Raiders. And a lot of people are low on the Raiders. I'm also low on the Raiders. I expect them to be last in their division. And I don't want to spend a whole heck of a lot of time on this one because I just don't see it as being necessary. The Raiders and the Chargers do have a tendency of playing close. Division rivals in general typically do. But the Raiders and the Chargers, they have a tendency of playing each other close. I'm going to take the Chargers because I think Jim Harbaugh is going to be telling every single player in that locker room, from Herbert all the way down, statement. Let's open the season with a statement. And if they don't, he's going to have... Listen, we know Jim Harbaugh. He'll make waves. I think this is a statement game that they want to make against the Raiders to kind of show an identity change in Los Angeles. I'm taking the Chargers. Then we got Seattle and Denver. I think... I gave my opinion on Geno Smith. We'll see how that ages. So far, I think it's aged quite well, with the exception of one good season that he had. Bo Nix is a rookie. He reminds me of a poor man's Alex Smith. I think I mentioned that before in the previous video as well. And I think this Broncos team, some people have them being one of the worst teams in the league. I'm not one of those people. I think they'll be below average, but not horrible. Seattle is going to be similarly to the Cardinals, in my opinion, one of those teams that's going to be competitive unexpectedly and even maybe have a couple of streaks of wins throughout the season, because it's not a bad roster by any stretch. And they were decent last year, and not much has changed in Seattle, so I'm going to take them to win their home opener against Denver. This next game is Tampa Bay hosting Washington. I think whenever you have a rookie quarterback going to start their first game in the NFL, there's going to be a little bit more eyes on the game than there would be otherwise. And I'm always interested in the rookie quarterbacks, no matter who they are, especially when we had 6 of them drafted in the top 12 picks of the first round. Unheard of, a record. Jaden Daniels was the number 2 overall pick behind Caleb Williams. He's the reigning Heisman-winning quarterback. He's a freak athlete. There's obviously questions about his physical attributes, not because he's a short guy, but he's a very skinny, slender guy playing a position, a style, I should say, not a position, but a style of football that is going to set him up to get banged up. So we're a little worried about how he's going to handle the hits in the NFL. But if he stays healthy, I do have him as my Rookie of the Year, sleeper behind Caleb Williams. And I kind of like Washington right now. I think that they look not terrible. I think they're going to surprise some people. I do think that if he stays healthy, Jaden Daniels is going to have, like I said, that Rookie of the Year type of season. And I think they're like a dark horse wild card team. I'm going to take them in what I believe is a slight upset over the Buccaneers. And I'm a Baker Mayfield guy. I'm not one of these guys that thinks he's a top 10 quarterback by any means. You saw where I ranked him in the previous video. I am a Baker Mayfield fan, but I think Washington's going to take this game to start the season. I really do. So we'll call that, I believe that's an upset. Next game is Cleveland hosting Dallas. As a Giants fan, I hate Dallas. I think if you're not a Cowboys fan, it doesn't matter what team you like, you hate Dallas. They are going to be a good regular season team. They typically are. I'd say out of 10 seasons, you can bet 5 to 6, at least half the time, the Cowboys are going to be a pretty solid regular season team, if not better. And But we're just talking about the regular season because we obviously know in the last quarter century plus the Cowboys have not done anything worth note in the playoffs, which is hilarious. But taking bias out of it, as good of a roster as I think Cleveland is and how they could definitely fight for a playoff spot. They made the playoffs last year with Joe Flacco. I'm going to take Dallas because they usually start pretty strong. I believe Dallas will win this game on the road in Cleveland. It is going to be what I believe. I think it is going to be a very competitive game that could go either way, and there's plenty of those on this week's slate. I think the NFL did a really good job with this week's games, setting the tone for a lot of different games, and really giving us an idea of what these teams are going to be like right out of the gate. I'll take Dallas. Then we have the Sunday Night Football game, and let me tell you, the NFL did a phenomenal job. I know I just said it, a phenomenal job with this opening week schedule. The Thursday night game being Ravens at Chiefs, a rematch of the AFC Championship game. Regardless of how that game turns out, that's a phenomenal slate for the opening game. Then you have two teams in the NFC on Friday night playing in Brazil on a Friday night. Two playoff teams from last year, the Packers and the Eagles, albeit very different ends to the season. That's a really good competitive game that's going to set the precedent for one of those two teams throughout the season and see who and what they are. This Sunday Night Football game, I'm incredibly excited to see. The Rams and Matthew Stafford return to Detroit against Jared Goff and the Lions. That's a story in and of itself. Whenever those two teams, ever since that trade went down, whenever those two teams meet up, you know that that's what the commentators are going to be talking about. You know that that's going to be the storyline throughout the game. And I find this very interesting. I think the Rams are going to be a good football team this year. I do. I think that they're a playoff team. I also feel that way about the Lions. Now, Matthew Stafford gets traded from Detroit for Goff to go to Detroit, a team that Stafford could not win with. Ever since Goff has been there, with the exception of Dan Campbell's first year as coach, right? First year or two as coach. Goff's done a lot of winning over there. You could argue Goff has done more for the Lions so far. Actually, I don't even think it's arguable than Stafford did throughout his career in Detroit. Now, Stafford's got his ring. I would think it very interesting if Detroit ends up getting a ring with Goff. Then you have to really argue who wins the trade there, and how do we look at Jared Goff? And how do we look at Matthew Stafford, knowing that Stafford had to beg for a trade, goes to a really good team in the Rams, an outstanding team, especially at the time in the Rams. Jared Goff is shipped out there for what we thought would have just been 1 year's worth of play and then get tossed to the side after that. What if he goes out there and wins a ring? I think that'd be... I think we'd have to give more credit to Jared Goff than Stafford. As far as this game goes, I'll take Detroit to open up the season with a big win over Stafford and the Rams on Sunday Night Football. Again, super excited for that one. Here's another final game of the week, Monday Night Football. Another very interesting story for an opening game. The New York Jets and Aaron Rodgers travel out to San Francisco to face the defending NFC champions. Two to three takeaways here. Obviously, how are the Niners going to bounce back from their Super Bowl loss against a team that does have a lot of hype in the Jets? But you know what I think is even more interesting is the Jets opened up last season on Monday Night Football in New York against the Bills. Now, they ended up winning that game, but as we know, famously, Aaron Rodgers tears his Achilles on the fourth play from scrimmage and was out for the rest of the season. And we've had nothing but a year and a half of hype of Aaron Rodgers on the Jets. A whole bunch of ridiculous claims. Is he going to be vice president? Is he going to retire? Is he going to come back before the end of the season if the Jets are in playoff contention from an Achilles tear? I mean, it's been an absolute soap opera in New York. And they're opening the season the same way they did last year. The only difference is they're not at home against a divisional rival. They're on the road against the NFC champions. Huge game. Massive game. Especially against a team in the 49ers that haven't won a Super Bowl since Rodgers has been drafted, and the Niners passed up on him for Alex Smith. So he goes to his hometown team, to the team that most people, including myself, believe should have drafted Aaron Rodgers, and he's going to try to take him out. My prediction is he won't. I think the Niners are going to win this game. This is an incredibly exciting opening week of football. As I stated earlier, 2 games in at the time of recording. They have not happened in real time yet, so I don't know if I was right on the Eagles and the Chiefs winning their games. You'll know if I sound stupid or smart at this point. But I'm very excited for these games. I'm going to keep track of this as best I can. And obviously I'll be held accountable because I'm posting this on the internet and you guys are fucking savages and won't let me live down an incorrect choice if I made one. Those are my week 1 game picks. Tune in to the next time I upload something football related to figure out how I did and what I think about the games and then what I think about the games moving forward. Thank you.